All right, we on? Yeah. Good evening. Starting a new series. I've been thinking about this one for a little while. So we're going to jump in. And it'll be kind of, a little bit will be stuff coming from headlines, from news agencies and things like that. But talking about the morality of it, it's not going to be news-based discussion, but it will have some of it in there, kind of as an illustration of what's going on. And so we're going to be talking about some difficult issues. I thought, what better time to do that than on a Wednesday night? So we're all here. We're all. It's rare that we have visitors on Wednesday night, so I think it's good for us to do that. There are papers in the back if you wanted to get one. There's 11 questions on this one. And tonight's lesson is going to be about abortion. Pretty fitting for considering we just had an election yesterday. Maybe you should have done it last week, but it doesn't matter. We're all on the same page with it, I think. So let's go ahead and have a prayer, and then we can get started. Father in heaven, thank you for all that you've done for us. Help us as we go through your word that we can understand you better. Lord, as we grapple with some difficult ideas and topics, we pray that you will bless us and help us to have wisdom and patience with other people around us, and help us to be able to articulate your will, your word, so that we can help sway minds toward thinking the way that you think, that you would have us to think. Father, we pray that you'll bless this congregation, help us as we grow in love and unity, that we will continue to see that expand, and that we'll open up to other people around us and be able to find those people who are looking for you and to take them in and teach them your word and bring them along, teach them about Jesus so they can be saved as well. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to study and to come together. Pray that you'll continue to bless us as we try to serve you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, so last night, there was a Jimmy Kimmel Live special event. You know who Jimmy Kimmel is? He had a fake church choir came on to promote his agenda for abortion, which is pretty ironic. He knew what he was doing. They were standing it's about 8 women standing in front of a stained glass window with robes on and little tassel things that they wear in some of the denominational places. And so they look like a legitimate choir, and they start singing to be funny. And this is what they were wishing for abortion and wishing screaming babies on members of the Supreme Court. So literally what they said was complete with the Church Organ, they sang, "More unwanted children. The Supreme Court is to blame. We hope they always have a screaming baby on their plane." So they even had poetry in there to make us, because that convinced us, right, that, well, of course we should have abortion. And they weren't trying to convince anyone. They're just making fun of people who are against it. The transcript from this is all taken from right off the page. I just cut and paste. But there was there was a video that played some that wasn't actually written. So I transcribed some of it so you could have it here. He said, women's reproductive rights are under attack. 13 states have banned abortion, with a dozen more on the horizon. And that was Jimmy Kimmel. And then the choir, with much applause and cheering from the crowd, that's when they said that, more unwanted children, the Supreme Court is to blame. So that's what we're facing, and of course we know that that's very common. It's a very common attitude that we have in our society, that abortion is not wrong, there's nothing wrong with it, in fact it's a good thing. And in fact, from what I understand, a majority of people in the country believe, at least in some instances, that abortion is okay. And we just need to see a proper mindset about it. So I realize that this can get kind of complicated, and I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but we can have the general principles, and then maybe we can think through some things related to that. So that's a disgusting display, and he's he's blaming the Supreme Court, they're blaming the Supreme Court for the attack on women's reproductive rights, which is completely an oxymoron to call abortion a reproductive right. But that's what they are doing. So let's go through these questions, and then hopefully we can generate some good discussion, and at least we can be on the same page. So Psalm 139 is the first place to go, or at least it's the first one. This is the representation here of the knowledge of God, how that it doesn't matter where he is, where David is, God is always there in the sense of he knows where he is. And he's in verse 1, for example, he says, "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You have known my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. There's not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it altogether." So this is all about the knowledge of God, what he is aware of. And he's saying that there is nothing that he's unaware of. He says in verse 5, "You've hedged me behind and before. You laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day, and darkness and the light are both alike to you. For you formed my inward parts and covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them." So here is obviously a reference not just to, he mentions heaven and hell, and I didn't look up the word hell. I don't know if it means death or literal hell. I don't know. But wherever he goes, the presence of God is there, at least in the sense of the knowledge of God. He knows everything about him, and that's the context of this. So what does verses 13 through 16 teach us about babies before birth? Does it say anything in there about that? We're starting off kind of an easy one. What does it say? Right. So in the womb, who was it there? It was him. Right. So one of the arguments that is made today is that, well, what are some of the arguments that are made? When is life supposedly set to begin? Depends on who you ask, right? What are the claims, the different claims that we have? Heartbeat. What else? Do you know there are a lot of people that believe that you become a human when you breathe your first breath? That until then you're just a glob of cells. You're not anything. And there are people actually that try to support that idea from the Bible. Because God breathed into Adam and Eve. What did he breathe into them? The breath of life. Therefore, the breath is where life is. But he also said life was in the blood too, right? So that's a figure of speech. So that's one. So we have two extremes. Then what are some of the other designations? They kind of have an arbitrary number, right? 9, 10 weeks. I think 10 weeks is the amount of time that it takes supposedly for the heart to develop. That's an average. Any other ones? Are you aware of any? Yeah, when the baby moves. That was another one that I heard about. So there's a lot of issue with this, and I heard one of the best explanations on this when I don't remember where I was. I was in one college class somewhere. I don't even know what college it was. He asked the question about when life begins, and his contention was it doesn't. And that's a pretty interesting thought. He said the two cells that merge together to form a baby are already alive. Right.
So no matter how disordered we are, whether we're one cell or two cells, we're still in his eyes.
Sure. Yeah, he wasn't saying that wasn't alive. He's saying it was alive before it ever even started forming. Yeah. Right. So the question becomes, when does a human being form, really? Because if the cells are already alive, then life doesn't actually begin. But human life begins, right? So when does that actually take place? In conception. And that's the whole point of it. And this is the implications of what these verses are teaching. When it's formed, when the baby is beginning to form, that is a human. That's life. And it's pretty plain from that, at least from the implications from that. Another one is Jeremiah chapter 1. I think when I was growing up, someone told me that there was nothing in the Bible about abortion or life, when life began. And so I was taught that in extreme circumstances, or if the baby isn't too big, it's okay. And so I grew up thinking that way. And so I went to my first college. I was in college before I started realizing that that's not really right. And so there are a lot of people around, and I grew up in the church. So there are a lot of people in the society around that have swallowed the idea that the baby is not alive. And whatever they're taught, they're going to believe that. And so we have to be able to teach them something different. Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse 5. Behold, I formed you in the womb. I knew you before you were born. I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations. Now, this doesn't mean that he has sanctified every human being, or he has ordained every human being as a prophet to the nations. But what does this say about humanity and the knowledge of what God knows? Yeah, before I formed you in the womb. It wasn't I formed a thing and then it became you. It was I formed you. So that's the process, and we know that that's a natural process. It's amazing to see the process of the cells starting to divide and multiply and all kinds. It's pretty quick too. It's pretty amazing when you see that. You know what? One of the biggest hits against abortion was when they came out with that 4D. They call it 4D. What is that? Ultrasound. Have you seen pictures of those? I mean, it's almost like a photograph. I mean, it's almost like it's right there in front of you, because they're so good, and they're three-dimensional, and I think they call it 4D because, I'm not sure, probably because you can actually see it moving and stuff. And when people have, in protests and rallies, and people are holding up the signs to support the idea of abortion, people have gone and just showed them pictures of these babies and said, what do you think of this? There's a popular video going on right now in social media. This man is talking about what do they call it, a zygote at 10 weeks? I don't know what the technical name is, a baby at 10 weeks from pregnancy, or into the pregnancy. And he's showing a picture, and it's just a blob. He said, this is what you're fighting for? There's nothing in it. I mean, it's just a blob. It kind of looks like mucus. And what he's doing is this is the sac that is growing around the baby, and they take that and they're showing pictures of it to people all around, saying this is what people are fighting against abortion for. That's the blob of cells, which is completely wrong. So you actually see it, and you can see the heart beating. It's completely different, and there's so much propaganda and lies that are going on. So the more we see of this, the better it's going to be for us. I'm speaking of humanity in general. But what's happening is people are flagging if people are putting pictures of the real thing online. People are flagging them and taking them down and disputing them, and of course then the social media gurus jump in and cover it up, say this is offensive or take it down completely. People have lost their entire sites because they posted stuff against abortion. Another one that is pretty popular. You probably were taught this in school if you went to school. Not necessarily, but it is still being taught. It was a graph. I wish I had a picture of it. I don't. There's a graph that shows the supposed stages of the development of the embryo, and they compared it to like other animals, amphibians, and they showed, see, these are all similar. So at about 10 weeks, they look like frogs, or they look like tadpoles are frogs. They look like some kind of a fish or some kind of a bird or something. See, this is not a human being yet. And they use that to teach kids just by observation, well, that's not a human. It doesn't actually become a human until it starts having human characteristics. That's one of the arguments. And that has been completely debunked. In fact, what happened was the man who created it originally, he actually went in and just cut and pasted and copied, and he took stuff from different animals and put it in the timeline and said, this is a human. He completely lied. He completely fabricated it. And he was busted for it. Everyone recognized. And yet, every year when new science textbooks are put out, that is still put in there. In fact, what they're using that to teach is evolution. They're saying that that's the process that we went through in evolution. You can see it. So it starts with the first cells and then the amoebas, whatever, and then it grows and grows into a human. And so we go through all the evolutionary stages while we're developing inside the mother, and therefore you're not really human until you get to that final stage before birth. That's the argumentation. But when they do that, they're teaching that you're not human, and so it doesn't matter if you kill it, because it's like killing a dog or a frog or something like that. Okay, and it's still being printed, and it's still being taught as truth. There's still science teachers who are teaching it, and I don't know if it's been taken out in any places. I haven't heard anything about it, but I know it's definitely been in some of the science textbooks that we've seen. When we see it when we're running through it with homeschooling? Of course, I know that was a while back, but okay, so God knows what he is forming inside. Look at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 27. And then we're also going to read chapter 9 and verse 6. Now, this is really an important connection that we need to make. Chapter 1 and verse 27 says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. All right, we all know the story, or the account. What is it that is unique about humans that is not in any other created being? Made in the image of God. As far as I know, I have no idea about the creation of the angels. I don't know how that happened or when, but it's not said that they were created in his image, but humans were, for sure. Animals were not. So there's a distinct difference between humans and animals. Wouldn't you agree? I remember substitute teaching one time, and it was a third grade class, and they were going through science, and I was reading the questions that they had to answer, and one of them was about the animal human, right? So basically it was that phrase was in there, the fact that the idea that we are human, that we are animals. And where does that come from? Evolutionary teaching, right? So we have supposedly progressed from the ape-like creature to a human being, which we are now, and so we're just animals that happen to have a better, higher IQ than other animals. Well, that implies something. That's a whole other thing. But I asked the question, "Hey guys, are y'all really animals?" You know what their answer was? You bet. They argued with me about it. I said, "You're not an animal, you're a human being." No, we're animals. You're a human being. And there is a difference between an animal and a human. Are there characteristics that are similar? Sure. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we're the same. Somebody said that 98 or 95% of our DNA can be matched up with a potato. I've seen some people that I think had 99% potato, but Does that mean we're related? Obviously not, right? So, I know this is a completely different thing, but while we're on it, why would God create something and so we have 2 arms and 2 legs. Why would God create other animals that also had the ability to use 2 arms and 2 legs and have 5 fingers? Why is that so special? Is it because we all came from a common ancestor? That's the assumption. There's a really simple way to answer that. If it works, why not keep doing it, right? So if he created animals that had fingers and toes and it works to have 5, aren't you glad you have 5? I mean, if you're missing 1 or 2, you're still good. So there's a good balance. There's good reasons that we have these. And if it's efficient for us, why wouldn't it be efficient for other living beings? And that's at least an observational argument that you can make. So anyway, coming back to this, we're not animals, we're humans, and there is a difference. One of the main differences, really the main difference, is our value. And the value comes from what? From God, that we're made in his image. In fact, that's what Genesis chapter 9 is about. So Genesis chapter 9 is right after the flood, and this is when Noah came off the ark, and this is when he made the covenant with creation. We put the rainbow in the sky and all that in chapter 8. And in chapter 9, he goes into, so in verse 4, he says, "You shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Surely your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning, or for your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I will require the life of man." Okay, so what he's saying here is you can eat animals, you can't eat the blood that's in it because there's life in the blood. And he's teaching them early on dietary smartness. Okay, so then he goes on and says, but you cannot kill a human. You can kill all these animals and eat them anytime you want to. You can't kill a human. And anytime you kill a human, your blood will be required for it. And so he says in verse 6, "Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For the image of God he made man. And as for you, be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply it." Okay, so what was the rationale for God's decision that humans could never kill another human? Because we were made in his image. He was making a distinction. We can kill all the animals we want to. We can eat them if we want to, but we can't kill humans. In fact, what would happen if animals killed humans? They're put to death. Same thing as a human. If a human kills a human, death penalty. Animals kill a human, death penalty. What if animals kill other animals? It doesn't matter. I'm not saying that animal cruelty is okay, but we're talking about differences here in apples and oranges. And we are unique. We have the right of life, and we have the innate, inherent value. And that value is not that we're smarter than all the animals or we can make fire. Ooh, it's the fact, or our brain is bigger. It's the fact that we are in the image of God. So in that sense, we've been made special. So that's a really vital part of that. And it's pretty obvious then, how does this apply to abortion? You kill a human. One of the arguments that I heard was, if I take a set of nail clippers and I clip my nails, I may get some skin there, and I've killed human cells. What's the difference? It's just cells in the womb versus cells on your finger. Pretty obvious difference, right? In one, you're killing some human cells, and the other one, you're killing a human. There's a big difference. But these are the kind of arguments that people are taught, and they're not taught in the playground. They're taught by schools. They're taught by classrooms. And there are plenty of teachers who do not teach that stuff. I realize that, yeah. Yes. Oh, exactly right. Exactly right.
It's a teacher telling you, because it could be somebody after school, it could be somebody before school, it could be a parent teaching a mom.
Yeah, I agree.
Not just the teacher.
No, I hadn't stopped yet.
You get up, I'm stepping on the toes here.
I know plenty of teachers who don't teach it. I know plenty of teachers who do, right? And you have to admit, they have a captive audience. We also have politicians, everywhere teaching this. Social administrative people, government workers, homeschoolers even. It's all throughout society. So it's not just, these aren't arguments that are made up by kids in the playground. That's my point. Adults are teaching this stuff, and they're teaching it very well. Yeah. That's true. That's right. And when you have that kind of governmental support on top of it, it's just lots of money. And we've seen some exposés of harvesting and all kinds of terrible ideas that are floating around. Who knows how much of that is true? But sometimes there's smoke, there's fire. Anyway, there's a lot of money involved for sure. And conveniently, when politics come up, what's the reason that politicians talk about abortion? Votes. They're going to do whatever they can to get votes. And so if they feel like most of the country is for abortion, they're going to be for it. Not all of them, I'm just saying. That's generally how people tend to work. All right, so it certainly relates to abortion here because we are made in the image of God. And if the church doesn't teach that, who's going to? Can we count on the United States government to teach our children and our adults that God made them? Not now. It's almost illegal at this point. So we're going to have to get really active in helping people in the community see. So if their only way of hearing this is from the church or religious people, let's just put it that way, and most people don't go to church or engage in religious activities, what are they hearing? Not this. And so we have a lot of work to do. Look at Psalm 51. This is actually used in a lot of times to teach really strange things with Calvinism, but it actually proves a point. Psalm 51 and verse 5. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. Now, without going into the idea of original sin, when he was conceived, who did he think was being conceived? Him, right? Of course, him being David. And it's a figure of speech, but his attitude was that he was formed, not that a thing was formed that became him. There is a unique difference. He can't remember it, obviously, but it was still him. All right? Look at Luke chapter 1 and verse 41. This is when Mary went to see Elizabeth after Mary learned that she was going to have a baby and that Elizabeth was pregnant, so she went to visit. And it said in verse 41, it happened when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary that the babe leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. About how far along was Elizabeth at this point? About 6 months. So verse 36, she was in her 6th month for her who was called barren. So at least 6 months we have this baby, John, what is he doing? What is implied in the fact that he was leaping? There's some kind of rejoicing involved. In fact, she said, let's see here, did she actually say it? Was that Mary who said it? Maybe I'm assuming things. Anyway, he jumped whenever he heard Elizabeth. And so it says the baby leaped in her womb. And the word baby there, by the way, is the same word that they would apply to a baby who was born. They didn't have a distinction. If they did, they didn't make a distinction between before and after the birth. Incidentally, one of our cultural things actually works against us a little bit, and that is how we date the age of the child, right? So when the child is born, how old is he? We go by days and then weeks and then months, right? You know, in I think it's China, do you know how old the baby is when it's born? 1. Because they recognize, right? And it just makes sense. I'm not sure why we do it. I mean, it's probably because that's our Western mindset. It's been going back a long ways in Europe, probably, where we're going to say, well, it's a year, 1 week from birth, 1 week from delivery. And so that's kind of how we've always done it. But that shouldn't imply to people that we don't think that there was anything going on before that, but people have used that against us, and it was never considered before like that. Okay, so what makes a human valuable enough to allow to live? That's the question we have to ask. And this is one that has broad-ranging implications. There's a magical timeline. There's a magical place where we can discuss these things without consequence, because supposedly there are no repercussions in talking about any other part of life, and that is in the womb. In the womb is this magical place where we can talk about it. Doesn't matter how old. There are some people who believe that the baby can be in the process of being born and they can still kill it because it hasn't been born yet. So it's in this magical land where the implications don't affect the rest of humanity or the rest of our lifestyle, which is complete bunk, right? We have, how much space is in between from the baby to the outside? I mean, microns, right? I mean, very little room. I mean, it's very easy to cut a lady open and expose the baby. So there is really no difference between that point and an 80-year-old. The same arguments that we make for why a baby should be kept alive are the same arguments we'd make for why an 80-year-old person should be kept alive, or they could be made. Okay, so what is it that causes a human to have enough value to live? Our value is determined by God, right? That's the only reason that we have to say that we shouldn't kill a baby. So then if you get around the idea that there's some magical place in the womb where we can discuss these, the implications are far-reaching, right? So the implication then, if your baby is going to have Down syndrome and is going to be dependent on you for his entire life, and it'll be a short life, and maybe even guaranteed to have lots of pain and problems. This is a reason that people will say, I'm going to have an abortion, and it's okay. Whenever we thought when Carla was pregnant with Jayla, we thought she was going to have Down syndrome at one point. And it was never a consideration. I mean, there's no way we'd ever even thought of it. But the doctors brought it up. You might want to think about this, didn't they? Right. We had to tell them we're not going to consider it. Don't talk to us about it, because they wanted us to consider it, not a consideration, because this is our baby. So if it's okay then, why wouldn't it be okay for a 12-year-old? You finally come to your realization that this 12-year-old boy or girl is destined to this the rest of his life. There's nothing you can do about it, so there's no difference. In principle, there's no difference. I've heard it. Yeah, it's crazy that I've heard people actually, they recognize the hypocrisy of saying that it's okay in the womb, but not outside, and they're saying, okay, fine, we'll just kill them outside the womb too. I think it was, I don't remember who it was someone in politics that was saying that we could do it up to 5 years old, I think is what it was. And it's outrageous.
Unnecessary and they have probably just as good skills, probably to live any more than anyone else. So
That's true.
so think about that implication.
That's a very good point.
One of my best friends, another teacher that I've known for 40 years, her second child was a Down child. He's lived to be 50 years old. So what was the point in killing him?
Exactly. And even if he, I know some people. I don't know how old. I know a couple of them have lived about that long too. They're not expected to live that long, but even if it was a year, it's still not a way. We can't just say, okay, well, he's going to die in a year anyway, right? First of all, we don't know. He could live to 50. Secondly, length of life is not what determines our value, right? Or how much we contribute to society, or how smart we are, or how good looking we are, or what talents we have.
You know, if we don't sit and research our human beings, if we use it to mold them to be a certain way, using Mozart or classical music, we'll do all kinds of things to take care of ourselves, to make sure that baby is as perfect as it will be. Excuse me, what is, I mean, it all has to do with your attitude towards you. It
Yeah.
has to do with your attitude toward what you're conceiving, not the value that God places on it.
That's right. That's right. And whether we recognize the value of that baby or not is irrelevant. It's still valuable, right? But you're right. The way we treat it is because of how we view it. That's why this is so important. Yeah, and that's getting in other places too. So I don't know if y'all heard that, but there are 0 Down syndrome babies in Iceland because they always abort them. It's crazy. It's ridiculous, is what it is. Do you know how many babies have been aborted in this country since Roe versus Wade came out? It's like 90 million or something like that. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Do you know that there are, at least in New York, and I don't know about the rest of society, but at least in New York, half of the babies who are black are aborted. And they're screaming for more. Now, that's an indictment on the mothers and the fathers and the situation. It's also an indictment on the government who is pushing it, and they are. They're definitely pushing it. And so, you know, I realize it's very complicated, that there are a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts, but we're still dealing with a human being. And so I think from that, you have to take that stuff off the table. Whatever else happens, you have to take that off the table. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Almost immediately, when you sit and sing a certain kind of day, or sit and walk a certain kind of day, or you can just sing or rock, and that baby's going to fall asleep.
It's used to that. Right. And even traumatic experiences can be pushed on to the child through the mother. There's all kinds of things. Yeah, we're learning more and more. Yeah. So what about babies that are brought about by rape? How do you respond to that when someone says, what about that? That's right. So I don't know if everybody could hear her, but she said that the woman was violated and she's going to have to deal with that. You can't throw in the killing of your child on top of it. It's not going to fix it. In fact, you know, that's the only crime that anyone would ever consider, that you know, you kill the victim for it, or even a bystander for it. Had nothing to do with it whatsoever. Wasn't even involved in it. And he is, or she, the baby is produced, and we're going to punish the baby for it, right?
something to allow her to give up the rights or something that would allow that child to keep living. And
Yeah.
I understand she may have a lot of hate there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She should have counseling, she should have health care, she should have something to do with her. They are not kids.
Yeah, at the very least. Right. Yeah.
And so I think
Give them a fighting chance.
things are more important in the legislature than promoting abortion.
Right. It's just easier to take care of our problems. This is kind of getting at the heart of this song that they're wishing screaming babies on the people on airplanes. But remember what they said was there are more unwanted children. The Supreme Court is to blame. Who's to blame for the unwanted children? It's certainly not the Supreme Court. Two people that made the baby. And it may be the one person that made it in cases of rape, that kind of thing. But still, it's not the Supreme Court's fault. But it is a season that we're in where we're looking to blame everyone else, right? So I get a free pass because it's someone else's fault. Yeah, I'm not ready for it, so I can't take responsibility to make sure, if you live a morally pure life, you don't have to worry about it, right? But that's not going to happen today. We have to have the right. This is what they're talking about. Abortion is not a right of, what do they call it? Reproductive right. That's not reproduction. What they're saying is, I want to have the right to have intercourse and not have any consequences. That's what they're saying. And that is not reality. God has determined where all that stuff is supposed to take place in the confines of a marriage, and there's a reason for that. But then we have to deal with, okay, well, how do we deal with it? It's going to happen. How are we going to deal with it anyway? Yeah, there are a lot of problems that come up, obviously. But, does the church have any responsibility for trying to help people in the community who are facing that kind of struggle? New, unwed mothers, that kind of thing? Paul? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that too, and it's I can sympathize with that to a degree. She may not have intended to be in that position. We all make mistakes, but sooner or later we have to take responsibility and say, okay, I've got to either give this thing up, or the church can rally around and help. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could happen, and turning to God is the absolute best thing for that, because now we can put our trust in Him to take care of that. And the people that refuse to do that, it's one of those things. There are consequences for the decisions that we make. And I hate to be that way about it, but if you have the options and you don't take the options, you're going to have a hard life. That's the way it's going to work. And most people today can make it, especially in this country. We got so much aid that's out there. And if they would just reach out, they can do quite a bit. And I'm not trying to be unsympathetic, but you don't kill a baby because you're having hard times.
If we choose to be sympathetic and think about any sin that I create can cause problems for anyone in our church, if I'm not more sympathetic to people when they are sinful,
Mm-hmm.
then we're pushing them towards something that could be illegal or something that's probably wrong for them to do. So we may have to start looking at how we judge so that we allow them to realize it's a mistake.
Right. And try to help them find a way out. 100% for that. So, all right. Well, thank you very much.